Welcome, everyone. I'm Henry Gracie here at Gracie University, Torrance, California. And let me begin by saying that it hurts me to say this, but it's kind of a sad truth and reality that I've come to, and that is that police officers are the most undertrained professionals in America, specifically when it comes to use of force. There is no field of professional endeavor that I know of where people are asked to do more with less training and preparation than when you ask a police officer to non-violently control another human being who is eagerly resisting arrest. And today I'm going to prove why this is the case, and I want to propose a solution that hopefully will reshape and redirect training as it pertains to law enforcement in America. Because if we can figure this out, we can not only increase officer safety, but we can also reduce the danger and the concerns and the lost lives and the injuries to suspects and civilians ultimately that they are interacting with. This video was recently sent to me. Jose Guzman entered, this is very recent, entered a police station here in Los Angeles, bust straight in. The officer who was there in the lobby at the police station gets punched. You can see here, the guy puts his hands up, and I can't tell you how many people sent me this video. It went viral, super viral. Look, punches him down. The officer loses his balance. The man comes over. Jose now reaches for the gun in his holster, takes the gun out of his holster. Officer's on top for a moment. He's successfully able to draw the officer's holster, or his weapon out of his holster, and at this point, he hits him in the head with it multiple times. He loses control of the weapon. Right there, it falls on the ground, and then he reaches down, picks it up, and you can see here, he racks the slide, and he points it at the officer's chest, and he pulls the trigger. It doesn't fire. The safety was on. He ends up leaving with the officer's gun, and then at this point, another officer comes to his aid to help him, and they have a shootout outside. They eventually catch the guy, and people said, "Henry, do your breakdown, do your thing," and I said, "Hold on. Guys," it kind of sunk in, and I realized, here's the close-up view from the body camera. Look at this, trying to strangle the guy while he has control of the officer's gun. At this point, I realized that I'm tired. I'm tired of doing reactive breakdowns to police incidents in America. What happens? We do a breakdown. We show what he could have done in the situation. We say, "Hey, Officer LAPD, you can come in and do GST for free." He gets training. It's great. And then what happens? That's it. One officer's life has changed, and on they go. The reason we're here today is because I don't want to do reactive breakdowns to untrained, disastrously untrained officers anymore. I want to propose a solution that prevents the videos from going viral to begin with. It's going to take some work. It's going to take some collaboration. But more than anything, it takes understanding of where we are. Whether you're a civilian, a police chief, a cop, a city manager, whoever you are in the equation of importance here, you need to understand the reality. We need to just kind of open up the hood and look at law enforcement training for what it is and see to what effect, to what degree it's affecting both safety in America for civilians and law enforcement, but also relationships between law enforcement and community. It's never been as bad as it currently is. And in my opinion, training is one of the core elements as to why it is so bad right now. Check it out. This is normally how it goes, you guys. So an instructor from a police department goes to a subject matter expert. With us, it's defensive tactics, jiu-jitsu based. Our course is called GST. So the cop comes to us. We do an awesome week-long, 30 to 40-hour certification course. This was at the Navy Special Warfare base in Coronado, California, Advanced Training Command with the Navy SEALs and many other police officers from the southwestern part of the U.S. who flew in to be part of this GST course. Me, Brian, and Eve, a great course. They graduate. They go back to their departments. Listen, and that's where things start to fall apart because those people who we certify are tasked with teaching their colleagues. Here's the problem. When they start teaching the colleagues, the limited amount of training is very sad, you guys. Look at this. 4 hours per police officer every year, if they're lucky. Some states, it's 4 hours every 2 years. And when I tell people, civilians this, that I have friends and interact with, they're always shocked to hear this. And I was shocked the first time. The first 100 times I was told this by the cops that I interact with at the training level. 4 hours per year per officer every 2 years. In California, it's every 2 years. Here's the bigger problem. In those 4-hour training blocks, they get scattered skill sets. We're talking about use of force policy, suspect searches, restraint devices, right? So there's all these other things that are talked about during that 4-hour block. So the actual training time on techniques that they actually need to stay alive could be an hour or less, or not at all. So this, to me, is at the core of the disaster. Just to give you some perspective, this is a side note. It takes 664 hours of training, mandatory hours of training in California to become a cop. That's the California post requirement, 664 hours. To become a cosmetologist in California, it's 1,600 hours. To become a barber, it's 1,500 hours to become a licensed barber. That's more than twice the California requirement for officer training to become a police officer. So if that doesn't kind of shine light on the degree of the problem here, nothing will. But check this out. Let's talk about the police officer hands-on proficiency scale in America. This is our American scale right here. And this is all based on averages and expectations. Look at this. The civilians, this is a police officer with no weapon, their ability to control someone with their hands in a nonviolent manner, hopefully, or otherwise. Civilians expect cops to be here. If you ask any cop or ask any civilian, like, how well trained do you think cops are? They're like, oh man, Navy SEAL, Navy SEAL, Navy SEAL. They think it's Navy SEAL. No, Navy SEAL is you train 18 months for a 6-month deployment, military deployment. That's Navy SEAL. Law enforcement is 600 some hours to become a cop, and then 4 hours every 2 years, and the one skill that you probably need more than all the others, right? They spend way more time on firearms, which we'll talk about, than they do on defensive tactics, which will save way more lives. But anyways, back to the point. Civilian expectation is up here. Look at this. The reality is more like this. Out of 100, it's more like 3 or 4 on the proficiency scale, you know? And then the expectation is at 100 or higher because they think they're Navy SEALs, but they're not. They're not. I just told you how much training they're getting. I have students, civilian students, who get more than 4 hours of training in a week, and they're not even cops. Some studies have shown that were shared with me that in a 25-year career, a police officer can expect to have anywhere around 800 critical interactions with civilians. A civilian, a normal person, during that same 25 years might have 2 to 3 critical interactions. Heavy aggressive argument, a physical altercation, a push, a major road rage, something that would be really escalatory beyond regular conversation. 2 to 3 per 25 years. Cops, 800. And they're down here. Now, obviously, there are exceptional cops who are here. There are exceptional cops who are here. But average American cop is here. And this is from experience of interacting with all of their trainers. And when I train their trainers and see the deficiencies there, it only tells me what the end users, and then the videos go viral, and we see the result of this when they don't know what the heck they're doing and they're overwhelmed in the situation. Now, this is the most important line to understand. If you can't see it, the yellow dotted line. This line right here, the gap between public expectation of officer capabilities and actual officer capabilities, that right there is called the PD gap. Police disappointment gap. The bigger that gap, the greater likelihood and possibility for a civilian to be disappointed in the actions of a police officer. Because when they see the police officer, they expect him to easily and quickly be able to subdue and control someone non-violently. And instead, the police officer rapidly escalates through their levels of force, taser, pepper spray, sometimes firearms or deadly force. When the public looks at that and says, wow, someone who's trained like a Navy SEAL shouldn't have to do that. They should be able to tie him up in a knot and just hold him down like any trained Navy SEAL should be able to do. But that's where the confusion comes, right? So the gap, because failed expectations is really what this is all about. If we expect officers to behave professionally and use a minimal appropriate level of force based on the threat level, that's reasonable expectation from the public, right? So when that's greatly exceeded because the cop doesn't know what they're doing in that situation, in many cases, they just don't know what they're doing. And we're going to talk about the neurological implications here. And as a result, they escalate force. That's where the disappointment comes in. And when the video goes viral, the world now sees it. We can't hide it anymore. Cops were always this poorly trained. It didn't get worse. They've always been disastrously deficient in defensive tactics. The only difference now is everyone sees it. So it travels much more rapidly. And when one video goes viral in one city for a disastrous use of force, now, not to say that there aren't uses of force that are not caused by other variables, such as bad apples or bad cops, which they do exist, but a huge percentage of the excessive force videos that go viral, I look at them and I go, oh my gosh, they were trying, but they had no idea how to hold that person down. So when the guy got up and ran away and is running away or took away the officer's taser and gets shot as a result, all of that, and I look at that and say, wow, with better control tactics, we could have kept the suspect under control, and we wouldn't have had to escalate. So I really tie it back to the use of force in these situations and the poor training that they receive. Police disappointment gap, you guys. This is in many ways the crux. Now, there's only two ways to solve this. One is to lower public expectation. The other is to increase officer capabilities, because once the public's expectation and the officer's capabilities in a physical altercation match, then they're very much less likely to be a disparity in the expectation versus the performance, right? We got to bring up performance and bring down expectation. Here's the challenge with the expectation drop, is that in so many other ways, cops meet or exceed public's perceptions and expectations, or at least meet them. Let's talk about cops should have law enforcement should have nice uniforms, and they're all buttoned up and they're tight. They should have big guns. They got them. They're in the car. They got the rifle. They got the sidearm. They should have the best, newest taser. They do. The best patrol cars. You won't believe what an inside of a cop car looks like. The buttons and gadgets and electronics, and they put another $150,000 into a car to make it a cop car. So the point is, public expects this of cops in those categories, and the cops have those tools, those capabilities, and that equipment, right? But when it comes to defensive tactics, hey, a cop should be able to hold someone down, hold grandma down, and not punch her in the back of the skull because she's cussing at him and having a mental health crisis and doesn't want to go to jail. He should not be punching her in the back of the head. He should be able to hold her down more gently than that. In that category, they can't meet the public's expectation because they're not given the training to even have a chance. Now, there are major risks when it comes to this training deficiency that plagues our nation right now. It's serious. It's a real problem. It can't be more real. There are obvious and non-obvious risks when it comes to this training deficiency. The obvious risk is cops' lives are in danger. So if I'm talking to cops right now, you guys need these techniques, because we saw Jose Guzman attack that officer and hit him with his own gun. How much would that officer have cared to have the skill set that would have allowed him to keep his gun in his holster, protect until backup they were in a police department, and he could not defend himself long enough for backup one corner around in the hallway to get there. That's how desperate and untrained this officer was. So they want that skill set. So officers, you know how much in danger you are for the lack of training that you're provided for your job. And then you have the non-obvious, right? Which is what I'm trying to make it very clear today, is that civilians are in much greater danger when cops are undertrained. Okay, check this out. You have a situation here. Look at this. This is the degree of cop danger. The guy punched him in the face. Cop actually shot him in the arm. There's Jose attacking this officer in the face again. So this is the obvious, like cops are in danger. But what's not obvious is the degree to which officers will excessively increase the level of force so rapidly because of their fear. And this, my friends, to understand why they rapidly escalate in times where they don't have the training to do it more gently and more controllingly, you have to understand the neuroscience, the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. The prefrontal cortex being the part of the brain that is responsible for the logical reasoning, the predicting of consequences, impulse control, if-then rationale. Your logical decision-making part of your brain is your prefrontal cortex, which is right here, the blue part. The amygdala, on the other hand, is the emotional side. Fear response, emotion, survival, fight, flight, or freeze. Basically, when you're in extreme danger, right, or fear or loss of control, you guys, and you do whatever it takes to stay alive. And the problem is this is the real problem. This makes it perfectly clear. It's called the amygdala hijack. You have to understand this to understand the use of force implications. The amygdala hijack occurs when a police officer experiences loss of control in a high-stress situation. Not just cops, anybody. But we're talking about cops today. So the amygdala and the PFC, prefrontal cortex, look like this. This one gets shut down. The amygdala takes over. So all your actions are now no longer logical or clearly rational decisions based on consequences and predictable consequences. None of that. It's all gone. So once you understand the amygdala hijack, the implications on the use of force by police officers could not be more important. This is the crux of the entire thing. And then once you understand this, then we're going to segue into the solution and how we're going to achieve what has never been achieved up until this point when it comes to training for officers at the degree and the frequency that they actually need to stay safe and keep people safe in the process. So when the amygdala takes over, you guys, what you first have to understand about use of force is that there is this culture in law enforcement. I call it escalation culture. Now, there are exceptions in departments that are doing better, but by and large, there is a culture in law enforcement where cops will escalate to the level of force that is justifiable based on the department's use of force continuum. Now, that was a mouthful, but every department has a continuum, right? It's kind of like a graph, a scale, a ladder that determines how much force an officer can use based on the threat level they're facing. right? Is it a passive suspect? Is it a passively aggressive or passive resistance? Is it active resistance? Is it active aggression towards the officer? Is it assaultive towards the officer? Is it assaultive with the possibility of serious bodily injury or death, which in case obviously would warrant deadly force as a response, right? So those are the threat levels, and cops are allowed to use force based on where the suspect's threat level, what level of threat the suspect is presenting at any given time. Here's what's wild. Here's what you have to understand about cop culture. There's a feeling that cops will escalate to the level of force that is justifiable. So instead of using the level of force that is necessary in the same situation. So it's justifiable on the department's use of force continuum, but may not have been necessary is the point, right? So in a situation where, like, to give you an example, we'll show this right here. Check out this video. This is what it looks like in the amygdala height. Very emotional, lots of strikes, chaotic control, unintended outcomes. Here you have an officer, Donald Hubbard. This is Kansas City. Donald Hubbard controlling the suspect who punched the cab driver and was drunk, the suspect. He's trying to control. He loses control at this point. He falls underneath. Watch this. Over the head, has no control. The suspect falls underneath. At this point, the suspect does get a dominant position, starts clawing at his face, and starts hammer fisting his face with punches, right? He's punching. Officer Hubbard draws his weapon, fires one round. You can hear it in the audio there. One round, and it kills the suspect in this situation. Now, the tragedy here, Officer Hubbard and the suspect, off-duty firefighter Anthony Bruno, on his wedding night, getting a cab from the wedding to his hotel, was shot after an altercation with the cab when Officer Hubbard tried to intervene. So this right here, now here's what's wild. This is a justifiable use of force. Regrettable, very sad, but justifiable on the use of force continuum because Donald Hubbard's life was in danger. Had Anthony Bruno knocked him out, because he didn't know he was a firefighter. Had he knocked him out, he could have taken his gun and shot the officer. So the officer had to use deadly force based on the continuum and based on his level of training. And that's what's important to understand. It was justifiable. But because of the amygdala hijack, because he was in 100% fight or flight mode, right? And because of the poor training that Officer Hubbard received, he didn't have a choice. There wasn't a logical, technical option for him to resort to neutralize that threat until help arrived and keep his gun in his holster and save the officer's life. Save the firefighter's life, Mr. Bruno. So this can be the consequence of the amygdala hijack. Besides simply not knowing what to do and being in danger, you will often escalate when it comes to use of force. This will often look like this. So the rapidity with which you slide through the use of force tools and options in your arsenal is much more rapid, much quicker than the trained alternative who will only use force that is necessary. So this, although justifiable, was a rapid escalation exacerbated by the amygdala hijack that is a result of loss of control. So what we hope to do is give officers a techniques and a skill set that will give them that perceived island of control in the context and chaos of a fight so that they can protect themselves and protect the suspects in the process. So compare that amygdala equation to the PFC, prefrontal cortex officer, the one who maintains PFC activation when it comes to use of force. They have the same tools, right? But it looks completely different, you guys. An officer who has training, you look at it and you go, wow, it's almost unrecognizable because it's so deliberate and so technical. Check this out. Our guys right here. Officer Jared Tipton right here, full control of the suspect, turns him down, not a single punch thrown. Ruben Alvarez takes the suspect down, achieves the mount. Look at this. No punches, holds the suspects, talking to him, and at this point grabs his radio and calls for backup from the mount until help arrives. Not a single punch thrown. Officer Derek Crawford catches a perfect armbar. He actually learned this with us in our GST program. Catches a perfect armbar, gets on his radio. Look at this. Calls for backup with armbar in place without applying any strikes or even hyperextending the elbow of the suspect in that situation. So he was PFC. Listen, you guys, all of these officers maintained prefrontal cortex and deliberate action the entire time. So even in situations where higher level of force would have been justified on the use of force department continuum, it wasn't necessary, right? So when all you have is a hammer, everyone is a nail, right? So when you give officers no hands-on training, all these tools, they become what we call over-reliant on their tools, and they use them more rapidly and they escalate more quickly in their application or deployment than an officer who has hands-on and has way more options. Not everybody's a nail. I'm not limited to just a hammer. They got a screwdriver, they got a wrench, they got a this, they got a that. They have all these tools to use depending on the situation. So here's what it looks like. PFC, use of force from a prefrontal cortex officer. Instead of just rapid escalation, look at this. They have non-violent control methods that can be applied at any phase of the altercation. So no matter where we are in the altercation, right, until, of course, you actually deploy deadly force because you're being shot at or someone is running at you or taking your gun and you have to do what you have to do, there are situations where it's perfectly justifiable and necessary. That's the key. But where it's justifiable but not necessary, a well-trained officer always has the skills to de-escalate. Now, cops talk about de-escalation a lot, but that's verbal de-escalation. Someone's running out of their house with a knife and you back up and give them breathing room, give them space as you should. Talk calmly, ask open-ended questions, maintain distance from them. So you don't have to use your gun because they aren't as much of a threat if you can stay away. So verbal de-escalation training is a thing and is appropriate and is necessary. But what we're talking about is a different level of de-escalation. I can be in the altercation with the suspect. They can be trying to punch me in the head or scratch my eyes out, and I can control them, immobilize them in a way that does not warrant or make deadly force necessary, and talk to them. The best part about this is throughout all this, an officer with this level of confidence has the confidence to verbally de-escalate at every level. And in most cases, they'll have the confidence to speak to the suspects or civilians in such a calm, deliberate, and confident manner that the suspect will change their tone. And an altercation won't be necessary, right? Because it takes two to tango. And in many cases, an officer who's calm and confident will avoid the inevitable altercation. They will avoid it because their calm confidence and their verbal de-escalation and the great training that they've received, like you saw. So this, instead of that, you have constant de-escalation attempts from the officer who is well-trained and maintains PFC activation. They use force based on what's necessary, not based on what they can justify, right? There's this thing in law enforcement where they say, oh yeah, as long as you can articulate why that level of force was justifiable, you can use it. I don't like that. Now, of course, you will need to articulate it, but I don't like this idea, this cop idea that as long as you can articulate it, you can do it. No. As long as you can articulate, it was justifiable, it was justifiable. But just because you can articulate this level of force doesn't mean you shouldn't first try this if this will solve the problem based on your training. So what is necessary versus what is justifiable? Excellent. So everyone wants to know, what does it take for an officer to leave the amygdala hijack party and join the prefrontal cortex club? The club of officers, and there are many out there, thousands in the country today, who are already on this and are well trained because they find it on their own time. But thousands of officers who have the confidence and the PFC activation at all times. And what does it take to get every officer in that category to help them join the club? And the answer is deliberate and unmistakable. At least 1 hour of jiu-jitsu based training per officer per week in America. More is great, but no less than 1 hour. Now, based on what? Well, first of all, what is that number based on? Second of all, why jiu-jitsu? First of all, that number is based on teaching for 20 plus years professionally, both in the civilian and law enforcement side, and seeing people. I see what happens when someone trains once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, 4 times a week. I can see the progress, right? I can see what happens when someone trains once every 3 months. Even students here, civilian students, they don't have the muscle memory. And if you don't have the muscle memory, you don't have the control. And what's the definition of the amygdala hijack? Actual or perceived loss of control. To maintain that control sensation and that muscle memory, you need to have a relationship with jiu-jitsu, not just an interaction once every 2 years. You need to have a relationship. And as my brother Hidon says, the difference between a relationship and an interaction is just frequency. Frequency. So once a week, no less per officer, per department in America. Now, why jiu-jitsu? Good question. There are many other arts, all have great attributes. But here's the deal, you guys. Jiu-jitsu has a 100-year track record. We're approaching 100 years here in the next 5 years. 1925 until now. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, 100-year track record of empowering smaller, weaker individuals to defend themselves and control and defeat larger opponents in real combat and in ways that are completely controllable, right? So the scalability of violence, right? The degree of force and the excessive or the gentility of the art. Jiu-jitsu as a martial art actually translates literally in Japanese to gentleness art, the gentle art. So it is the art that it gives you the ability to subdue and control someone without requiring excessive force or excessive strikes or excessive violence. And in the few cases where we use a submission or a joint lock or a control hold, we can use that until we gain compliance, and then we can alleviate pressure and transition into a cuffing procedure that is safe for everyone. The point is, you're not seeing this spastic, violent, emotional outburst of energy or baton or taser or firearm that could have been avoided in the same situation if the officer had more training. So it has this incredible track record. And listen, all other martial arts, they have great benefits. But when it comes to solving this particular problem, when it talk about the use of force being too excessive as an average across America, right? That's really the complaint and the concern here from the people, understandably, based on what we're seeing in the media and what's going viral. The use of force is too high, the force is too aggressive, and we're rapidly escalating too often in our interaction with civilians. Based on that problem, that's why jiu-jitsu is the art to bring down the level of force. It is the control. It is the compared to other arts, which are very effective, but so violent that you're actually pouring fuel on the fire, which is what we want to avoid. Okay? So look at this split screen here, you guys. What do you see? PFC's on the left, amygdala's on the right. Look at the control. Look at the difference. Just look at the visual. Look. It just looks different. And what's crazy is the guys on the left, Jared, Ruben, and Derek, the only things that they have in common, besides the fact that they're all GST, right? Gracie Survival Tactics Law Enforcement course graduates, they've all done the course with us, our law enforcement instructor course. Besides that, the only thing they have in common is they all practice jiu-jitsu off duty at least 1 hour per week. These are hobbyists. It's their lifestyle. It's their thing that they do, right? And their success in the field is not just because they did the GST program. That helped to make them instructors in our course. But their success in the field is largely attributed to the regular practice of this incredible, gentle, non-violent martial art called jiu-jitsu, right? So the question is, if this is true, if the difference between left and right, PFC and amygdala, can be summed up to something as clear and simple and proven as at least 1 hour a week of regular jiu-jitsu practice. This has been known because officers have been successful who have this level of interaction with jiu-jitsu for many, many years. If that's been known, then why aren't police departments providing police officers with this training? This is the mystery. You guys, over 15 years, I've been asking this particular question. Why do they only get 4 hours a year? What are we doing? The problem is, a lot of times I would be asking the middlemen, and they're just instructors at the department. The command staff, they have other information that I didn't know about, and these middlemen, the instructors who I certify, also didn't know about. And you guys, I finally was trusted with some information from two good friend California police officers. I won't share their names. They asked not to, but they shared some very important information regarding why this isn't currently happening. And they said to me, Henner, straight up, you're never going to get police officers to train jiu-jitsu 1 hour a week. It's not going to happen for two reasons, they said. IOD and ROP. You guys, IOD, injury on duty. This is one of the most paralyzing factors for command staff and police chiefs around the country. The possibility of an officer getting injured while working on, so they're here, they're having a lunch break, or they're training at the department. They do training once a week. 1 hour a week is a lot more than 4 hours every 2 years. They're training, they stub a toe, and they're out now. Let's say 6 weeks, they have an injured, broken toe. They're out for 6, 7, 8 weeks. They collect full pay. Sometimes they don't pay state taxes while that's happening in some states, and they're not out there working, right? So it's financially, you're paying for a police officer that isn't there working their job. So the financial implications of having an officer injured on duty are paralyzing. The possibility of that injury is like, no, especially by a lot of the chiefs who are more old school and are not as sold on training being the solution in many ways to so many of the problems we're facing here in America when it comes to use of force. Most know, but there's some chiefs that are stuck in 1974. I'm telling you, they exist, and it is what it is. Secondarily, reduced officer presence, ROP. Reduced officer presence means if a cop is training while on duty, if they're training 2-3 hours or whatever they're doing a training session, they're not on the streets. And if they're not on the streets, there are less cops present in the community. And lower officer presence means more crimes, because a deterrent is just seeing a cop car as a deterrent to crime. More crimes means, and less cop on the street also means slower response times to crimes that do happen. So the bottom line is that will lead to data points that are paralyzing for police chiefs because they really care. Understandably, they want fewer crimes on their watch as a chief, and they want Faster response times. What other indicator other than, yo, we're there and we're solving our community's problems right away? So listen, this is totally understandable. And when I finally got a logical, perfectly understandable response from my two cop friends, when I finally got that from them, I was like, no wonder this isn't happening. You guys, it was like an energy breakthrough on a whole different level to be privy and shared this valuable information. Because here's the thing, a problem well understood is a problem half solved. All I needed was to know what was paralyzing police departments and preventing them from basically giving officers the training that they need to avoid so many catastrophes that we're now seeing in the media. I was like, once I understand that, now that I understand this, we can craft a plan that addresses these two previously very unspoken concerns of the command staff around America. So let's do that. But before we propose the actual solution, we have to understand certain precedents that exist. My confidential informants share with me some precedents, you guys, that, man, you won't believe. These were game changers as well. So they said, Henry, you know what happens is police officers in the department, in many departments around our country, police officers are allowed to go work out at a gym. And the gym is privately owned. It's a gym that is not necessarily a department gym. Some have it in the facility, but some it's just go work out at 24-hour, Gold's Gym, Equinox, whatever. So go work out at the gym. And what's crazy is that this gym membership is funded by the city. Think about that. So private gym, and the officers are training off duty. They can go work out off duty. They do their own workouts, go to the gym whenever they want, funded by the city. And I thought, this is crazy. Tell me why the city is paying for gym memberships for police officers who are working out off duty. And they said, oh, well, you'd love to know. It's because officer health and wellness makes the officer healthier. They care. And I said, wow, is that it? He says, well, no, there's one more thing. Insurance savings, medical insurance savings. Healthier cops cost the city less money when it comes to medical insurance. It's a wellness plan. Keep them healthier, lower our insurance bill, everybody wins, and the cops get a free membership. And I thought, that's almost too good to be true. It sounds perfect, but there's one loophole here. How do you motivate these cops to actually go to the gym? Because I have to motivate the heck out of myself to get there. So I can imagine after a long, stressful day at work, there are things they'd rather be doing than going and working out at the gym after those crazy long shifts that they do. And he says, Henry, oh, you are going to believe this. Check this out. You have to understand career path promotion processes that are in place at so many departments around the country. I'm like, tell me more. He says, well, there are many skills and attributes that are very desirable by the police department that are not requirements for the job. For example, education, go get a degree, right, on your off time. Physical fitness, stay in shape. Skills and community involvement, go interact with the public. That's good. They want cops to do these things. Leadership, become a better leader. You don't have to be a leader to become a cop, but once you're a cop, if you are a better leader, you're a better cop. So the department, firearms training as well, marksmanship, the career path promotion process in place at so many departments, it incentivizes behaviors that are so important to the department because it makes a better cop. How do they incentivize it? Well, check this out. Promotions are incredibly important in police departments. As a cop climbs the ladder, they get better hours, better pay. Sometimes they get a company car if they're sergeant or higher or lieutenant. So as you climb the ladder in the ranks of police department, what happens is life gets better, right? So promotions in any category, in any job, the cops and law enforcement departments, police departments are the same. You want to climb that ladder. So what happens is for excellence in any one of these categories, you can earn up to 20 career path points as an officer. Now, what does that mean? When you have your promotion exam, written exam, verbal exam, stress test, there's many elements of the exam. And let's say each one of those tests is worth 100 points, right? 300 total. And they're only going to promote the top 3 test takers to sergeant, let's just say. And there's 100 guys taking the test. Well, guess what? If you've earned 20 points for leadership and firearms, you have 40 points total. Guess what you get to do? When it comes time to the promotion, those points are applied to your final score. So the difference between getting promoted and not, when they're only promoting the top 3 people, the difference could be 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 points. So it's very clear incentive to excel in these other categories that the department has deemed important because they're going to promote you on the basis of those points. They're as good as any other point that you get during the test. When I heard this, you guys, I was so stoked because it clearly tells me that they can take skills that are not required by the department to become a cop, not mandatory to be excellent, and still find a way to get cops to do them. And that's how you get this officer to go to the gym, And if he can do a certain amount of push-ups, a certain amount of pull-ups, run a mile and a half under a certain time, based on the qualification, based on their results, they can get up to 20 points on their career path promotion opportunity, and they can be redeemed during any promotion examination. So look at what you have. Cops train there at the gym, city pays for it, and up to 20 points on their career path opportunity. I'm like, this is crazy. Tell me more, you guys. And you guys, they just kept opening. Look at this. Firearms. I said, how do you guys do this with firearms? He says, Henry, you're going to love this one. Check this out. I just got to show you. When it comes to firearms, you guys, they have pins that go on the uniform of the officer for each qualification: marksman, sharpshooter expert, and distinguished expert. You guys, and these pins are actually worn on the uniform under their badge. And I'm jiu-jitsu and I'm martial arts and I love rank and I love promotions and I love these things, you guys. I was so stoked. I had to see them for myself. So these officers let me borrow some pins to show me that they actually exist, you guys. And they go boom right there, and it stays on their uniform. And I can't tell you. Well, they told me, Henry, the pride in achieving one of these levels is remarkable. And you look at an officer, you know right away what their rank is when it comes to their marksmanship. So I'm excited, but think about this. For some people, that pin isn't enough to get them out there and really practice their firearm qualification and their accuracy off duty all the time. But guess what does speak to most officers? Money, 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 money. You guys, with every pin, there's a corresponding financial bonus. This is an actual $8, $16, $32, $64 bonus. Not every year, not every month, every paycheck. You guys, if you're a distinguished expert, that's $64 twice a month. Twice a month, $64 equals over $1,500 in a 12-month span. That's called free money. How could you not get better at firearms if that incentive is being dangled in front of you? Literally dangled in front of you. How could you not pursue firearm accuracy and increase your marksmanship capabilities? $1,500 a year, I'll take it, especially with law enforcement salaries, as we know, average around the country, could be $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. That could mean all the difference to them. So of course they're going to pursue that. Now, just to be totally clear, these systems are in place at certain departments. They range. Some departments have it. Some departments, the monetary amount changes from department to the next. I'm just showing you examples, and they may change. So this is all examples for you to just wrap your head around what exists as certain precedents in law enforcement. So that's how you turn this into that. Look, pins, pay, and promotions are the 3 Ps when it comes to how we're going to incentivize excellence from officers in categories that we cannot make mandatory, but we sure as heck want to encourage because it saves lives, right? Ultimately, it saves lives. So they've gone to great lengths to make this happen in a way that avoids, because remember, this is mostly off duty. All this is happening off duty. It mostly avoids the IOD and the ROP, injury on duty and reduced officer presence. They figured it out. The question is, why did they do this? Why did they go all through all this effort to incentivize the heck to grow these cops? What's the real hidden reason? Well, it always goes back. Reduce liability for the city. Reduce liability, right? Think about this. You give an officer a gun. Imagine this story for the officer. You give the officer a gun. He goes out to enforce the law. The bad guy's running. The officer misses the bad guy, shoots the baby. The baby dies. This has happened. The baby dies. And then in the court, the family's now suing the department to say, hey, you shot our baby. How could you miss so far? And the attorney for the plaintiff there is going to say, yeah, what type of training did your officer receive when it comes to firearms? Oh, well, they get 4 hours every 2 years of training. And of those 4 hours, 3 of those hours are kind of just legal, policy, how to put on a handcuff. But in terms of actually how to pull the trigger and hit the target, 1 hour every 2 years. That's going to be a $15 million settlement for the family on behalf of the department, right? Who did not provide sufficient training to the officer in that situation. So you can see why the city, the department, everyone's so incentivized to make sure officers have expert marksmanship capabilities so they can say, no, he's a distinguished expert. He has this, qualified this level, and his initial academy, he got this one. They're going to pump all the training they provided to show that, look, it wasn't a negligence on the part of the department or the city. It was simply officer malfunction. He tripped and shot the baby. It wasn't because of poor training. Do you see where the line is drawn? There was no negligence. We trained him very well, or her very well. That's why they do this, you guys. They want to reduce liability, which really ultimately, back to money, saves money for the department. So here we are, you guys. I just had to put these eyeballs in here to really make you look at what's actually happening. Because once you understand exactly what's going on here, listen, what we have here is they've incentivized. Look at what happened. They've incentivized firearms marksmanship, really the use of deadly force, precision in the use of deadly force. They've been very creative how they do that. They've also incentivized officers getting healthier. Two very important things. But they have not yet found a way to incentivize the one skill set that will get officers healthier while enabling them to not use deadly force. You guys, we are here. This must happen. The precedents exist, the training exists, the opportunity exists, but this has been the unsolvable puzzle of law enforcement for hundreds of years, and not a priority until the last decade when the YouTube generation, the video streaming, and now all of a sudden everyone's streaming everything. We can see everything. Every incident's caught on camera. You cannot hide this training deficiency anymore. Now, before there were cameras, right, what happens is a bullet always leaves a trail. So that's why the bullets and the firearms were such a priority so long ago, because when you shoot, that's all the evidence you need. You shot from here, you hit there. If the target was there, why'd you hit there? You don't need a video to know where that bullet went. But now, use of force, physical, hands-on, every one of those is leaving its own trail, historical, it's tracked, and it's undeniable how that force was applied. So in the past, you didn't have to worry about use of force and increasing the level of training because there was no evidence, right? The bruises would heal, a punch, a hit, a baton, a taser. There was really no evidence, but the bullet always leaves a trail. That's why that was a priority before the camera generation. Now there's camera generation, every use of force leaves a video trail, which is why this is so necessary. So the question is, how do we provide officers the training that they need to stay safe while also protecting civilians, while also reducing liability for the city, thereby saving them money, while also addressing the IOD, injury on duty, and ROP concerns that are so real to every command, chief, staff, lieutenant, in every police department across the country. That's been the puzzle. And I have a proposal, and that is police officers have to be permitted to train jiu-jitsu off duty. Off-duty jiu-jitsu for police officers, funded by the city, incentivized by the police department. This is the only equation that will work during our lifetime. Why is it going to be paid for by the city? Well, two reasons. A cop should not have to pay for the training that they need to do their job effectively and safely. A cop should not have to pay for the training. No person should have to pay for the training that they need to survive a day at the job. Number one. Number two, once the city employees, city managers and mayors and representatives, after today's presentation, once they understand the degree to which better training reduces liability, once that happens, I'm going for it today, guys. Today we're pulling no punches, except for the ones that are pulled when jiu-jitsu is applied, because we don't need punches. When the city managers understand the reduction in liability, they're going to say, yes, we should and we will pay for it. And there are examples today of police departments that have already partnered with privately owned jiu-jitsu schools for 18 months or more. And they're already having incredible success, okay? So we have hundreds of certified Gracie jiu-jitsu training centers all over the world. The green ones are schools that are already open and active. The yellow ones are reserved territories where we have someone who says, yes, I'm going to open a school. They're going through the instructor certification process, and these pins will all turn green in the next several months. So this is always happening. People are reserving territories. New schools are opening. They're getting qualified. And again, these are certified Gracie training centers overseen by Gracie University here in Torrance, California, our headquarters, by my brother Hidon and myself, all personally trained instructors at every one of these schools. Now, our goal is to create partnerships between police departments and their neighborhood certified Gracie Jiu-Jitsu training centers. That's what we propose. That's what I'm going to explain how we're going to accomplish that today. Now, free isn't enough. Tell the officer, hey, you can go to train for free at this certified training center. Go learn some jiu-jitsu, reduce your necessity for excessive force, increase your capabilities of nonviolent controls. Go get it. It's not enough. Free is not enough for several reasons, right? Let's just be honest. I'm talking to the cops right now because we know it's real. And any cop who trains jiu-jitsu has spoken to a cop who doesn't and says, hey, come learn jiu-jitsu. And they go, no. I got my gun and a badge. No need. You guys, they're too proud. There's a lot of ego involved with law enforcement, right? And the thought of a law enforcement officer going to a privately owned, civilian populated martial arts or jiu-jitsu academy and being anything other than, the tough person that they think they are, it's humbling, and it's almost unbearable for some law enforcement officers. So for that reason, free isn't enough. Free isn't enough, right? So we need to apply the same incentives that are being used for all the other desirable skill sets and traits that police departments are making top priority for their officers. Pins. You already saw this image at the very beginning. Pins. Jiu-jitsu. Gracie Jiu-Jitsu pins, uniform pins that can be applied. Now, I have this indicated here, but it can be adapted for each department. But my proposal is your copper pin comes at 100 hours of training, 200 hours for your bronze pin, 300 hours for your silver pin, and 400 hours of civilian off-duty jiu-jitsu for your gold pin. Okay? And where does this pin go? You betcha, right next to your firearms marksmanship pin, you guys. The few cops that I've shown this to, you guys, they're losing their minds. They would not only love the opportunity to train jiu-jitsu off-duty and be funded by the city, but also the idea of having something that really represents, because look at how interesting. Imagine if you take this out of here, you have a badge, which is obviously authority, right? Then you have this firearms, which obviously means don't mess with me, because if I use deadly force, I'm not going to miss. Listen, when you pin and you recognize from an outward rank, visible perspective, and a cop has his distinguished expert in firearms, guess what? He can't wait to put that pin to work. That's the problem, is we created a culture where we're incentivizing the wrong behaviors. Now, I'm not saying cops shouldn't get the highest level of training and incentive for being good at their firearm, because if they have to use that, to use it. What I'm saying is we have to balance that with the skill set that will enable them to not need to use deadly force in any situation where less than lethal force could have solved the problem. That's all I'm saying. It needs to be balanced, okay? So you got your round pin, you got your upside down Gracie triangle pin right here, and off we go, ladies and gentlemen. But pins might not be enough for some. So guess what? We're going to tie, and again, this is all recommendation. Each department will choose what degree and to what scope. They include these promotions, these incentives. They can do all or none or some or whatever. Just to be clear, I'm not mandating this. I'm just saying, yo, wake up, you guys. I know what you're currently doing. Let's do it right for defensive tactics as well. So look, imagine a corresponding pay bonus, same example as firearms, for the skill set that will allow you to save lives on behalf of the department, which is also on behalf of the city, because police officers are city employees and representatives. And of course, the point promotion opportunity, career points. So you get 5 points per pin, let's just say, example, up to 20 points, which turns this into that. We've arrived, you guys. We need pay, we need promotion opportunity, and we need pins. Pins, pay, and promotion run the police world. So we have to apply these incentives to this initiative as well. And this, my friends, is called the Gracie Police Training Reform Initiative. And I can't be happier than I am right now to be sharing this with you guys. And I hope you can feel it in my energy, my voice, and my enthusiasm. Now, what's wild is I was so excited about this that before coming here, obviously I spoke to all my closest cop friends for their input and their advice. And several chiefs, police chiefs, who I have great relationships with, as you can imagine from our interactions over so many years of teaching the GST program. And I called the chiefs. And you guys, the unanimous response from the chiefs after breaking this down and getting some of their feedback, the unanimous response, Henner, when Gracie University is ready to launch this program, count us in. We're 100% down. They're ready to rock and roll. In fact, one chief said, Henner, my city manager, who has very good relationship with, sometimes it's contentious, sometimes it's great bond relationship. In this case, it was a very positive relationship. And not to mention, this chief was also a jiu-jitsu aficionado, super cool guy. This guy said, Henner, my city manager said we have an open checkbook when it comes to solving the problem regarding use of force, this use of force pandemic that is not only sweeping our nation, but is also problematic in our own city. In other words, we're going to make this happen one way or the other. Here's the challenge. In the cities where the police chiefs that I've already spoken to said, Henner, let's go. Number one, I was like, hold on, guys, let me make the announcement official first. Number two, I said, we don't have certified training centers in their city. We don't have jiu-jitsu schools of ours and of the quality that they would expect in their city. So we can't do it right now, but we're going to do it very soon. So the real question right? That especially for a department where the relationship with the city manager is not so solid, right? You have a police chief who's on board, the city manager, mayor, and the team there says, nah, why are we going to pay for this? Why should the city pay for this? Well, there are many examples, right? And we start with the physical and mental wellness, right? Because you talk about fitness, pay for their gym membership, it's almost identical. The only difference is jiu-jitsu is actually fun, right? Running on a treadmill gets boring after 6 months. Jiu-jitsu, every single day is a new puzzle. You're learning how to solve problems, learning how to be more effective with your body and the tools that you were born with. You're optimizing your human capabilities by learning what to do with your body, right? So there's incredible benefits. So the best workout is the one that you actually do. So in that sense, jiu-jitsu is every bit a workout and an opportunity for officers to get in better shape. But there's another aspect. There's a mental aspect here, guys, that I have to touch on, and all the chiefs agreed with, which was cop culture. Being in the copping environment is highly stressful, and even cop interactions amongst themselves can sometimes be corrosive, right? Like any organization, it can be tough. But the cop culture, it's a high stress, some corrosive behaviors there, and all that put together makes it to the point where one of the healthiest things a police officer can do is leave cop culture and go exist in an outside environment or population where it's not that. So the stress relief benefits are unmatched of being in a community, a positive activity where everyone's working together and collaborating and growing and working out, but we're all equal. Everyone's wearing the same uniform, and it's not a cop uniform, it's a jiu-jitsu uniform. They're all there. It's a whole different feel, and it's like a vacation from cop culture, which is very important. Similarly, we have countless, I'm talking thousands of students all over the country who suffer from PTSD, whether they're military vets or law enforcement professionals, right? This is a very real thing, especially in these high stress jobs that military and law enforcement professionals have. And for these people, military and otherwise, who are students of jiu-jitsu, in countless cases, they've reiterated to us to say, listen, jiu-jitsu is my most reliable coping mechanism for PTSD. This is because running on a treadmill, you can be running on a treadmill and still be stressing out about everything. When you're doing jiu-jitsu, it's gone. You're in that moment, right? It's all consuming mentally and physically in a positive way. And that's part of the reason I love it. I'm working in the office all day for 10 hours. Let me go do some jiu-jitsu right now. And I vacation from my own life with jiu-jitsu. So for many of our students and those who particularly who suffer from PTSD, it's an incredible asset for them. Okay. So of course, with healthier officers comes what? Insurance savings. So the same medical insurance benefit that gym memberships would have, so would jiu-jitsu schools. So at least we're starting on the same level. I'm going to talk about many other benefits, but we're starting on the same level. And that's very important that we recognize that healthier officers is a lower expense. Healthier officers cost less for the department. Now, here's another big one, community interaction. Not only is it good for police officers to interact with the community in a non-law enforcement capacity, it's good for the community to interact with police officers in a non-law enforcement capacity. The community getting to hang out and be in, right? They talk about community relations, so important. And this community interactions are critical because one thing that is a priority for every department is to humanize the badge. An important term that was shared with me by my friend Craig from Bellevue Police Department in Washington, humanizing the badge, something that I think is so important, right? This idea of do everything you can to show the civilians in the community that you are one of them. Yes, you have a job to do. Yes, you have to keep people safe, but you're still one of them. And interacting in a non-law enforcement capacity is one of the greatest reinforcers of that reality. Okay. Now, this one's big, you guys. Big benefit. True confidence and competence. Let me ask you, when you take an officer, a police officer, you take away the badge, you remove their gun. What's left? Who's left? You know what they call this? Uniform confidence. A cop who their entire sense of self-worth and value and confidence comes from the fact that they have these tools in this uniform and this true sense of power and authority over the community the civilian population. To me, that's hollow confidence. If your confidence is your badge and your gun, then you're not that confident, right? So when you take those two away, you see who the person really is. Well, guess what? By learning jiu-jitsu, officers develop competence without the badge and without the gun, and competence with your physical body and nothing else, and an ability to defend yourself, right, from a violent threat or control someone in a way that protects them and is in a non-violent manner. That competence will create a level of confidence that far exceeds anything any cop will ever have when it is purely badge, gun, and uniform based confidence. Okay, very important. And why does that matter? Why does that even matter? Why does it matter to have there's uniform confidence and there's true competence? confidence. Why does it matter? Because the more confident the officer, the more composed in the face of a heated exchange, especially when they have this type of training, and the more calmly they can address civilians, and the less likely they are to use force to begin with, right? And this is true on the civilian side. Who are the people that are most likely to get into a street fight? The people who are least capable of winning a street fight. And who are the ones who are least likely to get into a street fight? The real street fighters, the people who have so much training they could easily dismantle and tie anyone up into a pretzel. Those are the ones, right? I'm not getting into a street fight anytime soon, and I don't remember the last time I was, because every situation can be talked down, right? And if I was a police officer, right, and I had to go out on duty on any given day, and they said, Henner, choose, take your gun or take your knowledge of jiu-jitsu, I leave the gun home every time, because there's a 99% chance that an officer will have to use their hands-on skills during their career. There's a 1% chance, less, officers are going to, don't quote me on this, less than 1%, 1/100th of 1%, that an officer will ever pull the trigger during their entire 25, 30, 40-year career. So if that's true, guess which one I'm leaving home? The gun. Now, I'm not saying you don't need a gun for deadly force, clear threats, imminent danger. I get all that. I'm just saying I would never, ever consider going out on the streets and enforcing the law without the skill set that I've developed over so many years and I cherish so much. Now, in terms of reduced liability, use of force, and community relations, you guys, when we talk about why is the city paying for this, don't forget why we're doing this. Why is the city going to pay for this membership for this officer to go do jiu-jitsu? Reduce liability when it comes to use of force. All it takes is one use of force incident that the public perceives as excessive force to be caught on video and to go viral before you have a literal eruption. And in many cases, riots and fires and chaos in a city. So the question is to the city employees and to the police chiefs, what's it worth to prevent that eruption from happening in your city? And of course, the subsequent community relations impact, the collateral damage that incident and the virality and the riots and all of that happens on the community relations. Now you have a very hostile relationship between law enforcement and the community. So I don't have to sell you guys on how bad things can get when one incident, use of force, goes viral, because we're seeing it almost every month, if not every couple of weeks now. And in many of these cases, it had to do with the use of force that escalated too rapidly and was avoidable based on the necessity, and only escalated, in my professional opinion, based on the poor training provided that officer in the situation. Not every case, but many of them are, and I think you recognize which ones they are. Okay? So the question that they're going to ask from, the city's going to say, okay, we get it. It all makes sense. Especially city managers, if you're watching this right now, I know what you're saying. Okay, he makes a good point. All of these are great benefits for every officer. We want these benefits. But what pot of money is it going to come from? Because here's the thing. If it comes from the training budget, right? Oh, it's training budget, training, defensive tactics. If it comes from the training budget, you're going to say, oh, we already ran out. We did taser, pepper spray, baton. We did all the training, put on handcuffs, and our training budget has been, has depleted for the training year. That's what's going to happen. That's not acceptable. That excuse has got us to where we are. Oh, there's no money to train. There's no money to train. There's money. You just have to know where to look. Check this out. Officer wellness budget. This is way beyond. When we talk about PTSD, when we talk about stress, when we talk about anti-depression benefits, the fitness, the health benefits, this leaves the training realm and it goes into an officer wellness benefit for the department and for the city, which means we can pull from that bucket. Risk mitigation bucket. Check that out. The risk mitigation bucket of money. How much is it worth? How much will you pay to guarantee, right, to the extent that amazing training can guarantee, or at least reduce drastically the likelihood of an excessive force video gone viral in your town? That's the question you have to ask. And then, of course, the community relations budget. You have a budget for officers to interact with the public in positive ways that build that relationship. Well, guess what? That positive interaction cannot be more positive and more authentic and more real than two people, an officer and a civilian, training together in jiu-jitsu, sweating with each other, working together, helping each other get better every step of the way. No judgment, no separation. So here we go, you guys. This training that needs to happen off duty needs to be jiu-jitsu. We already talked about why, and the training must happen. Now, the concern is that regular Brazilian jiu-jitsu schools, and I haven't been to everyone, I don't know everyone, and they all are operated differently. Just to understand, BJJ is a completely unregulated industry. Everyone can do whatever they want, however they want. There's no governing body that says, yes, you can do this, no, you can do that. So people can open a school with no qualifications, no problem. So the training budget where this training actually takes place. BJJ schools in America, everyone's to their own. And as a result, the quality and the safety concerns at each school are completely different in how they handle that. So my recommendation, only because I can only speak for the certified training centers in the schools that I have personally with my brother overseen the training of and the systems and the curriculums of, is that my recommendation is that all the training partnerships happen at certified Gracie jiu-jitsu training centers. Because if an officer were to go to a regular BJJ school, as has happened all over the country, and they're to have one bad experience, I don't care how much you incentivize them, they're never going back. And there are several components as to what makes up the school, and I'll address some here, but that's the core. We have to make sure that the officer has the best jiu-jitsu experience of their life. And that is what I spend my entire adult life crafting and making possible. So when we talk about safety, safety is a huge concern, because what happens is you have this situation, beginner classes at Gracie University, very safe, structured, technical. In most BJJ schools around the country, beginners are sparring within the first weeks, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 months. They're sparring very early on in their career, and sparring means they're fighting someone else who's very determined to defeat them, and they don't know what they're doing because they haven't even learned the basics. So they're in a fluster. They're using excessive energy. They're going wild. Not at Gracie certified training centers, as you can see here. Every single class, full structure, full desire to make it 100% safe for every single student in the class. Literally, our number one goal is that a student leaves the class safe and comes back tomorrow morning excited, encouraged, and happy to be there. It's the number one priority, safety, for especially in beginner programs where we know we're dealing with fragile egos and untrained bodies. And since most Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools are having these students spar within weeks of their beginning, and so many injuries happen during that process, I caution any police department from sending their students, or their officers, I should say, to a BJJ school with that type of training procedure in place. It can be a huge disaster. Now, when you talk about self-defense, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the martial art, is both a sport, a recreational sport, and a self-defense system. It exists as both. And most BJJ schools focus primarily, if not exclusively, on the sportive practice of the art. Now, what that means is points and time limits and techniques that are going to be used in competition, but in many cases have little applicability in a real altercation that a cop might see themselves, especially when you consider the duty belt and the weapon systems and all of that. Now, at Gracie University certified training centers, all of the training is geared towards self-defense in our beginner programs. So in the beginning, because we're talking about challenge matches and real fights that have happened for the last 90 plus years, so all beginners are learning techniques when it comes to punch protection, distance management, energy efficiency, a smaller person defending against a larger person. But the techniques and situations that are addressed are all directly applicable to a street fight. And that's very important, because an officer needs to know from day one that what they're learning will be applicable in that situation. Now, here's where it gets good. All hundreds of CTCs all over the world, certified training centers of ours, and all of them follow the universal beginner curriculums. It's the same everywhere. So what you have is a structured curriculum, very structured, calendar-based. So I know what class is being taught every day of the month at every school all over the world, hundreds of schools. And the best part is students come to class, they have their full curriculum. They also have online access to all the techniques they're learning in the live classes, so they can study whenever they want. Now, police departments who partner with certified training centers, the other additional benefit is they get GST lessons, GST, law enforcement approved curriculum at the certified training center for the cops. And every cop in the department will get free online access to our GST, law enforcement curriculum, on video online. So if they can't come to class and do it in person at the certified training center and learn these law enforcement techniques, they can get it online during a lunch break, right? When they're at home, before bed. So the point is 24/7, police officers can make progress in their law enforcement applicable techniques if they're training at a certified training center, because they're the only ones authorized to teach these actual techniques. Now, we also talk about certified instructors and some chiefs, right? This is very common, where the chief might say, well, Henner, and this is what my two law enforcement informants said, Henner, the reason why Gracie University has to do this is because the number one question you're going to get from every chief is, well, wait a minute, this initiative sounds all good on paper, but how can we trust that we're sending our officers to a BJJ academy? What is BJJ academy? We're sending to some school, martial arts school. Who owns that school, and how are they qualified to teach our amazing police officers? That's the number one doubt you're going to get from the police chief, they said. And he said, Henner, the informant said, Henner, the reason you guys have to do this is because you guys are already the trusted entity certifying all police departments in America. Their instructors are doing Gracie survival tactics with Gracie University. So you're already the trusted entity when it comes to jiu-jitsu based defensive tactics. There's me and Hidon here teaching our GST instructor course. So look at that. Over 25 years teaching law enforcement, every department, federal, state, local, the instructors come to us to learn these nonviolent techniques already, right? So when you talk about the police chief having doubts in terms of safety or the qualification, like, yo, we're already the ones that are certifying your cops, not only your cops, the instructors. Over 100,000 officers in America have been exposed to our techniques through the instructors that we've certified, right? So we've certified thousands of instructors, 100,000 cops have reached it. Now, this is the civilian certified instructor program. The only difference between certifying civilians and certifying cops, right, since it's the same certifying body, is the civilian process is much more demanding. It takes longer, it requires more study, more practice, and a higher quality of instruction. So what's crazy is when the chief says, how do we know who we can trust? The response is, not only can you trust them because they are the institution that certifies our instructors, they are the institution that's going to be certifying the same certified training center that our department is going to partner with to get the necessary training for our. So it's coming from the same quality control source, which is Gracie University. That's why the chiefs need to have no worries about quality assurance. Now, there's one other aspect on the instructors. This is so critical. Charlie, our GST director, reminded me of this in our conversation. Listen, you guys, a huge concern for a police chief would be, wait a minute, they're going to be learning jiu-jitsu techniques in a off-duty capacity at a civilian-owned school. How do I know that that civilian BJJ instructor isn't going to be teaching them techniques that would be, or the psychology that might be wrongfully applied on the job, right? Because they don't understand the use of force. They don't understand the continuum. They don't understand policy regarding implementation of techniques in law enforcement. A BJJ instructor has no idea. So they can very easily teach techniques and mindsets that when applied in law enforcement could be disastrous or counterproductive or a huge liability for the department. Luckily, all of the Gracie University certified training centers, very well versed in the law enforcement GST curriculum, can teach in a way that not just empowers the officer, but also gives them the proper framework and mental and the psychology to apply those skill sets in a way that does not increase liability for the department. So that's a CTC exclusive, only certified instructors that because we speak this language for so long, you guys. Family friendly. If a cop is going to train husband, wife, sister, brother, they should all be able to train. Gracie bully proof, women empowered, the best demographic specific programs in jiu-jitsu we have at our certified training center as well. Why does that matter? Well, let me tell you this. When it comes to law enforcement, we know that divorce rates in law enforcement as a whole, the population as a whole, are higher than most other professional populations. And a family that trains together stays together. Okay. So my goal is like, yo, if the mom or the dad falls in love with jiu-jitsu as a hobby, the department's covering, paying for this and incentivizing this, and they fall in love with it, of course they should be able to bring their kids and their wife. And so many BJJ schools don't have demographic specific programs that are beginner friendly for the entire family. Whereas Gracie University, we know they do because we certify them in every single one of these programs, and the police department will benefit from those as well, indirectly. And then, of course, we talk about zero tolerance. This is the last one here in terms of the difference. Listen, you guys, I've been told by many police officers, I actually had a police officer student, California Highway Patrol, who trained at another jiu-jitsu school here in California, and said, Henry, I had to stop training at the school because they were conducting illegal activity in the school while I was there. Now, he's a cop off duty training with these guys, so he didn't arrest anybody. He was their friend, but he said, in good conscience, I cannot train there as a law enforcement officer. I can't be there, and I cannot take my family there. So here we are. And he drove twice as far to train here at Gracie University because he could not train at a school where they were conducting illegal activity. So what we're here to say is this. Every BJJ school is of its own. Gracie University certified training centers have to meet an operational and quality standard to be certified training centers under Gracie University. And we can ensure that A, we don't have criminals running these schools, and B, there's no illegal activity happening at these certified training centers. And that is something that's important to law enforcement. And I'm talking to the chiefs right now. You have my word that that quality standard will be maintained at all of our certified training centers. And I know how important that is, that you only send your officers to a facility where that can be guaranteed. Okay. So here we are, my friends. We got it. So I asked the chiefs, I said, hey, when I talked to them and I kind of present this and they're excited about it. And I said, chiefs, hold on. This sounds great, but this idea of doing it in a civilian realm, what about the idea of doing this, implementing this program in the department, right, by police officers. So let me certify you guys in all of our systems and protocols and curriculums. Let me certify you guys. Let's do this in the department under your own watch. So like almost like make it a certified training center in the department. And he says, Henner, it's one chief in particular who I spoke to about this. And he says, Henner, it's not that easy. When you have a gym membership, it's a weight rack, squat rack, Smith machine, treadmill, a couple bikes, and that's a gym. The cops can come. This is the off-duty training schedule for the officers. Off-duty cops can come use that gym whenever they want. It requires no additional work. Just keep the weights clean and they come whenever they want. They have a key. They can come in anytime they want. He says, when you talk about defensive tactics, it's a whole different animal because unlike gyms, you have to have a full class schedule because now you have to accommodate every off-duty officer. You have to meet all of their scheduling requirements and demands. They got to be able to come whenever they want. So you have to have a full, robust schedule, which means you have to have full-time instructors teaching these classes. And the concern is that you have to now have equipment, space, a room dedicated to this overhead, all of these things to make a full-on, full-fledged schedule of off-duty classes available to the officers, and all at the risk of weak attendance. It might be like 3 guys show up on a training session that's for an hour or an hour and a half blocked out. 2 officers show up, and there's a cop there to teach, full-time instructor there to teach dedicated. So it doesn't make sense, he said. It doesn't make sense for us to start a business within the department when this can be outsourced if the quality can be guaranteed, like you guys talk about. Quality concerns. One other thing, when cops teach cops on a very regular basis, the cop culture will prevail. Now, we do everything we can in our GST program. We actually certify instructors how to overcome this cop culture. We really do good work there. But over time, it leaks back in, and cop culture, right? They're not consistently recertified. It happens. So now you have regular classes, cop culture, where they're very sometimes derogatory in how they talk to each other. It's not so positive. It's kind of a fighter club mentality. It just kind of takes over. Things can happen where it becomes this fight club in the department where people do get hurt on duty or off because it's being run so roughly, and it's just sometimes inappropriate behavior. The point is that cop culture takes over and it ruins it, because if one cop goes to this training session and has anything other than the best training experience of his or her life, they're not coming back for session number 2. And that's what this all is about. If we actually care for these officers to continue with this type of training initiative, then we have to make it impossible for them not to be incentivized, encouraged, protected, safety-wise, every step of the way, because we actually want them to develop the skill set, not just the tough meatheads in the department who are all MMA, either retirees or MMA wannabes, and they're the ones who go and kill each other in these off-duty training sessions, which is always what it becomes. So because of that, you have more time, more money, less quality, overall admin headache for the department. Chief says, no, Henner, it's much better to outsource it so that you guys can run all of this for us, because there's a quality guarantee that happens at a certified training center. Why? When a civilian who owns a for-profit regular business, when a civilian owns that school, their success, their dinner on their table comes only if they provide an exceptional service to the student. Right? They're paying because someone is paying, they're teaching, and someone is paying them for that interaction. So they better teach every class as if it's the best and most important class of their life. At least at certified training centers, that's what we certify them in doing. So you get a guaranteed quality that the cop culture where you're paid as an employee, you're a cop, you're teaching another cop who kind of has to be there. So that doesn't exist here, right? Not only that, you have a full schedule of regular civilian classes that are already in place at a certified training center. And the police officers are simply jumping in with the civilians to partake in classes that are already happening. Now, there will be special separate sessions just for the law enforcement officers to get those GST law enforcement exclusive techniques. That will happen. But there will also be community classes where they're civilian classes where the cops can get their regular hour, 2 hour, 3 hours a week, right? Those will be with other people. So you have 20 people in a class. 2 of them are police officers. Guess what? The department doesn't have to pay all the overhead, all the admin, all the headache. So none of that is a concern. It's completely outsourced. Less time, less money. It just makes sense. Now, when they're telling me this and I'm kind of putting this together and he's saying, Henner, this makes sense. And not only does it make sense, there is incredible precedent when it comes to government institutions, both federal, state, and local, partnering with private businesses to accomplish a unified objective. This is very normal. We talked about gym memberships, right, already, but there in other, not even law enforcement per se, but other government institutions partnering with private businesses to accomplish their objectives is very normal at every level and at every size. So this is just plugging into that precedent of, look, we just do it better. We can teach your cops better and under a more efficient operational system than if you were to try to provide this frequency and this amount of training on duty or off duty in the department with your own staff, with your own overhead, with all the time and risking the weak attendance. We can just do it better. And when a private business can do it better than the government institution can do inside and on their own, guess what? That's when the partnerships are made, and that's what I'm proposing in this case. Okay, now what's crazy is even though this makes perfect sense, what I'm proposing, like as you look at it, once this came together, every cop that I've shared this with, every chief says, Henner, this is the only way. It's the only way. Even though it makes perfect sense, this hasn't been possible until now. For one reason, there hasn't been an institution that is both trusted by the government and trusted by the civilian sector equally and as highly in both categories. And Gracie University has finally become, through 25 years plus teaching law enforcement, 100 years of teaching and doing jiu-jitsu, and all the things we know in that category, here we are. Here we are. And now the necessity for this marriage between government and private, the reason why it's so important and so pressing is because every week that passes that this doesn't happen is a literal eruption waiting to happen from a use of force perspective. Okay, at least when it comes to empty hands controls and the unfortunate escalation of force that happens because officers are so disastrously undertrained in this particular skill set that will save so many lives. So you hear this and you ask, as a civilian, a city employee, a police officer or chief, or a BJJ school owner, how can I help? That's always, I get emails from all over the world saying, Henner, we love the law enforcement thing you're doing. What can we do? Well, now that you understand the framework of what we are aiming to, we're very determined to accomplish, let me explain how each party can help. And let's start by understanding why this hasn't been solved from each of these perspectives and how every single person blames everyone else in this situation. The city doesn't solve this problem because what they say, and I've heard it, oh, the state only mandates 4 hours every 2 years. So let's just follow the state mandate. So the city blames the state. The police chief blames the city, saying, no, the city won't fund it because the state only mandates 4 hours. So the city's not going to pay for an hour a week or a chance for them to train in civilian school. Like, there's no way that's not going to happen. So he blames him, she blames him, they blame them, and nothing gets done. The civilians blame the police department and say, hey, police department, how dare you? You guys are using too much force. You guys are crazy, not knowing that he's handcuffed by the city who's handcuffed by the state. And then BJJ schools are over here like, man, I mean, BJJ is the future because these people know anybody who's in this circle who's either a very dedicated student or a school owner of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they're like, oh my gosh, they know what I know, which is if cops only had better training, this would be like 99% solving this problem in America that we're seeing with use of force and the escalation of use of force. Not entirely, but a vast degree of it will be solved. They know this, as do I. But they're like, I can't do anything because I don't know what's going on over here, and they don't. So all I can do is sometimes offer free classes. Some schools will offer free classes. Some schools offer law enforcement discounts, and they do the best they can as individual schools, right? But here we are to piece this all together. Now that we understand the limitations and the blame game, that's over with, you guys. No more blame game. If you are a city manager or a city employee, you can't wait for the state. You can't wait for the state. You have to take action because here's why. If you wait for the state, when your city erupts because of a use of force incident that your police officer escalated too rapidly the utilization of force or a deadly force or a tool when they shouldn't have, and it goes viral, your city burns first. So there's incentive for you to take action, even though the state is up there. They're doing their best. The same as federal, right? The state blames federal. So everyone blames someone, and then federals, and then you talk to the White House, and they go, no. Each state run by their governor, so the governors have to. So everyone's doing this game. Don't wait for the state, you guys. City employees, city council, city managers, mayors, don't wait for the state. Talk to the chief. If you're on board, talk to the chief. And if the chief can be convinced and explain to how this type of training initiative can help save lives and reduce liability, you guys contact us at Gracie University. You email ty@gracieuniversity.com. If you have a pin right now, we're wrapping this up. Write down this email address if you care to be part of the solution. TY, like Ty. Ty is my guy. ty@gracieuniversity.com. Okay. Email him and say, hey, Ty, we're on board. We want to be part of the program. We want to get better training. Can we get a certified training center in our city to make this happen? And if there's one there, we'll marry you together. We'll help make it possible. It'll be the best thing you've ever done from a use of force perspective. If there isn't one, we will open one. We can typically in 12 months or less have a certified training center operational in a territory. Now, reach out to ty@gracieuniversity.com. If you're the police chief, if you're command staff over here and you're like, man, we need to do this. We need to do all of what was shown. And some of you guys, some departments don't do firearms incentives. Some of you don't do fitness incentives. Some of you are learning a lot of this stuff for the first time. Hey, you can have it all. It's not my ideas. I'm just passing it on. The point is, get with the program, get incentivizing, create better officers by speaking their language and incentivize them to do better, and they will become better, and provide them the skills to interact safely, and they will be safer, more effective officers. Chiefs, if you believe in the program, reach out to your city and say, hey, city, you won't believe what I stumbled upon. We got to do this. And if they're not on board yet, show them this video, and they will be. They'll understand. And then if the city and the chief are on the same page, once again, reach out to Ty at GracieUniversity.com, and he's going to help you through the process. We're going to make this happen. If you're a city, a civilian in the city, you're a community member, and you believe that better trained cops are safer cops, and you would like the officers to know how to arrest people non-violently, and you believe that the level of force used should only be based on what is necessary and not based on what is justifiable. If your team necessary, not team justifiable, so I got away with it because it was justifiable. If your team necessary, you need to reach out to your city employees, city council, whatever people you have contact, or at least just share the video, get it out there so that it's heard of in your community, because better trained officers are safer officers. Okay, and it can happen. Now, if you are the one city member, the community member, who is team jiu-jitsu to the core. So you're just a civilian, you don't even own a school, you're just jiu-jitsu head to the core, and you want nothing more than to be part of this solution. What you need to do is reach out to Gracie University. You need to reach out to us as well, because you need to learn about the instructor certification program through which you could become certified in our programs that would then enable you to establish the certified training center in that community that would then enable that partnership to take place when, if, and when the police department and the city come together and agree that better training is the way forward. So there's a process for you to go through. Now, what's awesome is that you have the opportunity to reserve that territory until you complete the certification, teaching methodologies, techniques, curriculum requirements. You have a lot of study to do. Much of it is online. Much of it is in person, right? It's a blend of online and in-person courses and learning and study. But between those programs, you're going to be able to learn the skills to operate and open that certified training center. And while you're preparing for that, we have a territory reservation program that gives you the yellow dot. Remember the map that had those yellow and green dots? It gives you the yellow dot on the map. And you can be safe in knowing that your investment of time and energy to become that certified instructor is not going to be ripped out from under your feet by someone else who has the same ambitions to establish a certified training center in that community. Okay, so reach out for that, you guys. I want you to go to GracieInstructor.com if you're an individual and you want to learn more about what you need to do to become certified in both our civilian programs and eventually GST to be able to partner with the department in your community. Now, if you are a BJJ school owner, you're 100% team jiu-jitsu, we know that, but you also are 100% team law enforcement needs jiu-jitsu more than anything. You believe that truly jiu-jitsu is the solution for this population. You really believe that at your core, and you want nothing more than to be part of the movement that will help give every officer in America the bare minimum 1 hour a week or more, right? We hope for more of jiu-jitsu that they need to do amazing work. If you're on that team and you believe that, then we need to talk, because you're an asset. You already have a school, you're excited to do it, and we want you on the team. Now, what you have to understand is because every BJJ school is unregulated, you have to go through a certification process to give us the certainty that you can maintain the quality standard that we know the police chiefs are going to require of the partnership in the community. So you're going to reach out to Gracie University, and you're also going to email Ty at GracieUniversity.com, and Ty is going to walk you through the process, explain the whole process, and walk you through the process of reserving your territory so you have an exclusive territory in which, right? So especially if you already have a school and you really want to partner with the department in your community and do it under the Gracie guidelines and quality control measures, reserving your territory is critical, because if not, if you wait on this, some individual civilian community member may decide to lock down the territory, and then you would be blocked out. Even though you have a school, the civilian would take precedent because they submitted the territory reservation application first. So Ty is going to help you get that application through the door, lock up your territory for 12 months, and then throughout that time, and it's free to submit that application to verify that your territory is available. It's called the Territory Reservation Inquiry. It takes 1 minute to submit. We find out, and if we verify that in fact your territory is available, then we'll continue the discussion of what the certification process looks like. Obviously, there are costs involved, but more importantly, here's what we expect from a certified training center in terms of the partnership with a neighborhood police department to make this successful for all the parties involved. Okay. And what's awesome about that, when we're thinking about the BJJ, is many people ask, Henry, I want to do this, right? Many school owners are saying, hey, I want to do this, but I'm affiliated with another BJJ affiliation, another group. Can I still do it? And the answer is yes, you can. This has nothing to do with BJJ affiliation, right? It's a certification. It's almost like you go to Harvard and you get your Harvard degree, you graduate, you get a degree, right? That's a degree. That serves you and you have an application, you can use that. So we're going to certify you and give you a degree or a certification or certificate and a quality control promise based on your teaching quality, the curriculum that's in place. So it's a certification. It's more of an operating system to ensure that quality control than it is, hey, you got to put our banner on your storefront, because we know BJJ is very affiliation and in some ways very political. But when it comes to law enforcement and the training that they need, we must drop and overstep and neutralize all the political, right, concerns and drama that exists in BJJ, because every city will need to have a training center where police officers can go train off duty on the permission granted by the city and paid for by the city and incentivized by the police department. We're going for every single city. So to reiterate, whatever BJJ affiliation you're part of, you can maintain that and still be a certified training center. In fact, we have many schools out of our hundreds and hundreds of certified training center. Many of them are affiliated with other BJJ affiliations and are not necessarily Gracie University schools. They're just certified Gracie Jiu-Jitsu training centers. In fact, many of these certified training centers are even other martial arts schools. You might have Norfolk Karate Academy, but it also is a certified Gracie Jiu-Jitsu training center. So this should help you understand that. And Ty can answer any questions you might have kind of in that regard and along those lines. Excellent. So the question you have to ask in all of this is why? Why must this happen right now? And why must it happen at all? Well, simply put, when a police officer responds to a call, whether it's a mental health crisis patient or a criminal of some kind, I believe, and America expects, and I believe is possible, that officer should be able to arrive and to control and physically interact with the suspect or the human or the civilian in that situation in a way that protects themselves, but also protects the civilian that they're interacting with. I don't think that's too much to ask, right? Now, if escalation is necessary based on a real threat, fine. But let's not let the escalation necessity be based on the training deficiency of the desperate officer who literally cannot find an island of control in the chaotic sea of the amygdala hijack and a violent physical altercation. Let's not let that be the reason why they escalate. Escalate deliberately and with full prefrontal cortex activation and precision and say, I need to use deadly force because if not, that person's going to die or I'm going to die. Let that be the calculation versus, I don't know what I'm doing, so where's my taser? Okay, I'm just going to shoot him because I can justify it. That's not where we need to be, you guys. The country right now is fighting, and many other countries as well, for reform in policing in America, and defunding. There's a lot of talk about police reform and defund the police. And I hear it and I see it. But I've become very curious. So I reach out to my law enforcement contacts. And in every case, I'm always curious to know their answer. I ask them, I say, hey guys and girls, the world is asking for defunding and reform. That's their proposal, is defund. What's your proposal for this defund reform movement? What's law enforcement? What's your proposal in return? They say, oh no, Henry, there's no defunding. There's no way, no defund. Can't defund. We need more money, we need defund, we need funds. I say, well, that's not a proposal, that's a denial. What's your proposal to solve the use of force and the rapid escalation of force pandemic that America is currently suffering from in cities around the country and on viral videos everywhere? What's your proposal? And in every case, before having explained this, they go like this. We don't have one. You guys, this is Gracie University's proposal for law enforcement in America in response to the same viral videos that everyone sees who are calling to defund and reform it. Now, this is our best proposal to help manage that problem in the most effective manner that it can be handled by better training based on the information provided, which is how much training affects an officer's use and escalation through their force options. Now, there are two types of departments when it comes to implementation of a system like this. One is the proactive departments. One is the reactive departments. The proactive departments, yes, let's go. The chiefs I've already spoken to. Let's go. Count on St. Henner, make it happen. 12 months or less, we have a CTC. We're ready to rock and roll. And they're out there, you guys. And I love dealing with them because what they're doing is they're getting in front of the viral video. They're preventing it from ever happening, and they're going to be just fine. Then you have the reactive departments, which kind of sit around and wait for that viral video. And they just wait, and they just wait. And then it happens. Boom. Or a viral video happens in another town, but because this police department is doing nothing about the problem. Listen, when you don't implement change, change is forced upon you. And how many cities in America today are having defensive tactics, or better yet, use of force mandates imposed on the officers by city council members, suits and ties, who've never been in a fight and are not cops and have no idea what it's like. Suits and ties are deciding how force can be used by cops because they were too reactive. So when you don't bring the change is forced upon you, in many cases by someone who isn't qualified to make the very changes that are made. When you have suits and ties determining how cops can arrest people, you're asking for disaster, and it's happening all over the country. So police chiefs, you have two choices. Wait for the change to be forced upon you, or become the change before it's forced upon you. And what's wild is this. As a police chief, I'm talking to the chiefs now. As a chief, it's very simple. You have a legacy or you have a job. What's a job? A job is something you had for 5 or 10 years during your era as chief. Guess what? Nothing changed while you were there. You had a job. But if while you were chief, everything changes for the better, and officers' lives are saved, civilians' lives are saved, community relations with policing are reunited, they're back to where they once were. If all of that happens on your leadership, guess what? You didn't have a job. You had a legacy. You left a legacy as a police chief. And this is the time. This is the time. What you decide to do for your officers and for your department will determine the future. What I can guarantee you, though, is that if you wait for the state mandates to increase to the point where officers are getting sufficient training that they need, listen, 4 hours every 2 years, when do you think we'll get to 52 hours a year? 52 hours, 1 hour a week, every week for every officer in America. When do you think that's going to happen? If it's up to the state, I'll give you a hint. Never. So you have to take this change upon yourself and make it happen. You have to find a way to make it happen. Hopefully, before city council makes changes that will never be undone, telling an officer that they can't lay on the suspect. Because if they touch the suspect's diaphragm, they may be subject to criminal charges as an officer. So then the officer says, wait a minute, if I'm going to lay on them and I'm going to be a criminal, guess what? If I'm going to lay on them and I'm going to become the criminal, I'd rather not even arrest them. And then crime rates go up because an officer doesn't want to arrest someone, or retirement rates go through the roof by the thousands, as we're seeing nationwide, higher retirement rates for officers today in departments across the country than we've ever seen before. And it's happening at a more rapid rate in the departments where the city council members have decided use of force policies that are disastrously counterproductive. Good intentions, but disastrously counterproductive. Okay, in many ways, not entirely. There's some policies that I agree with fully, body camera, reporting requirements. Those are all great. I'm talking specific about the application of force of someone who's resisting arrest, and you got to take them down and go hands-on. Training is not the only solution. It's not the only thing we need to tackle this whole problem, but it's absolutely the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to solving this excessive force, this use of force pandemic that currently has our country on fire. Okay, it's not the only thing, but it's the lowest hanging fruit, and we've got to pluck it together. It's going to take a lot of team effort here. We're going to make this happen. I don't care who you are in this equation. There's something you can do, and if you don't know what you should do, just share the video with as many people as widely as you can, because you have no idea who sees the video that you share, and if it lands in the right hands, then the right decision can be made and lives will be saved. You may never know it, but it happened, and that ultimately can't be a bad thing. Thanks for joining us, you guys. It's been my huge honor and pleasure on behalf of Gracie University to present this, and we're excited to have you as part of the solution and the future of policing in America. Thanks, guys.